Um, I'm Shivani Unakar. I'm moderating the session today along with Bhairavi and Elizabeth. We are part of the Edible Issues Collective. If we could just move over to um, that section of the board, Bhairavi. Yeah. Um, so Edible Issues is a food systems collective building, sorry, my screen is, yeah, building interventions at the intersection of food, climate, and culture. And as members of this collective, Harvi and I have also been working on this project along with our partners at Wild Harvest. So the idea of this entire program at Mahua Matters is to explore and celebrate Mahua for its not just as a tree or a flower or a heritage liquor, but as a living part of a larger ecosystem of cultures and livelihoods and histories and memories and new futures as well, which is where we're super excited to have everyone come and sort of imagine and create and build this understanding together. Today's session, which is called Opening the Field, really is to throw open the conversation and to learn from each other and share what we all know and kind of collectively um, build and grow our understanding of what Mahua is and what it can be. Um, and in the session, we'll explore, of course, this central question of why are we interested in looking at Mahua and why is it relevant now and today at this juncture, ecologically or from a culinary perspective, or many other sort of reasons and motivations and interests. So to quickly walk you through what this session is going to look like, we're going to start off with we're going to move through speakers who will share brief reflections from their own work with Mahua, whether it's in the field or in the kitchen or in other spaces. And in between a few speakers, we'll be breaking for this mapping session that you see on the board. So that's where we'll then be able to add all of the questions or thoughts or reactions or responses that all of you have as participants and sort of co-creators of this conversation as well. So we will navigate through each of our speakers share. We'll be taking notes and then we can see where these insights kind of sit within the Mahua map, whether certain insights may be, relate to culture or who and how, biodiversity, and see how this entire space, all the themes that come up and how they're, so interconnected and perhaps at conflict in some points. So yeah, that's briefly how we're going to be going through the session. Speakers, then mapping, then speakers, then mapping. To briefly maybe add a little bit about the workshop experience and this board itself, I'd like to ask Bhairavi to talk you through that. Bhairavi is a participatory research designer, and she's the one that's kind of created this entire workshop board. So if you could just, Bhairavi, share a little bit before we get into it.
Yes, thank you so much, Shivani. So the purpose of the board is to like make sure that everyone is participating while we are doing this entire exercise, and it's not done like in a silos or isolation. We have some activities planned. I think we'll take you through them while we come to that part of it. Some fun sort of like methods to see how we can document your thoughts. In general, I think important things that I would like to just remind is that there is like this Figma usage 101 thingy where you can see how to use some of the tools if you're new to Figma. And if it gets too difficult to use the tools in general, you have like this commenting button which will help you like just drop it wherever you need to, and any of it is too complex to understand, then you can put your notes into the Zoom chat and we will populate it for you. But I think that is mainly what I have to like explain for now. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Um, so I think with that, let's kind of move into hearing from the speakers that we have with us today. First, to sort of set the stage, I would like to invite Rishabh, who is the founder of Wild Harvest, and works at the intersection of forest produce and community livelihoods. He's going to be talking a little bit about the potential of Mahua as food, but also kind of setting context for all the other conversations that we're going to have today. So, Rishabh, I would like to hand over to you, please.
Oh, thanks so much, Shivani. And thank you, everyone, for joining in and participating. Really looking forward to all the speakers. And a big thank you to the whole Edible Issues team for doing such a cool project with us. I'm very excited. All right. So just let me know if you can see my screen, and then I'll just start. Are we good? Awesome. So, hi, I'm Rishabh. I live in Ranchi and I've been working with communities in the Jonha region for around 8 years now. Um, and I've spent a ridiculous amount of time with Mahua trees and really have been privileged to learn a lot with the communities we work with and by the Mahua tree itself. So, as many of you might know, Mahua is a magical tree, right? And I'm sure a lot of you here have been enamored by this uh, miracle tree, so to say. Um, I've had the privilege of working with communities in Jonah, and the see trees in its various like forms with fireflies around them. We've spent hours just under the tree at night looking at fireflies light up the tree. We've gone into deep forest to set up camera traps to hopefully catch eating mahua flowers. And I've had some beautiful conversations, laughter with like all our community partners. And it's just, I'm so grateful to be working with the mahua tree. Um, sorry, I'm just. All right. Just a basic overview on the mahua tree before we get into it. Firstly, it's indigenous to the Indian subcontinent, right? And it's also known as Kalpavriksha or a wish-granting tree by many communities. It's used for food, fodder, fuel, drink, and wellness. It supports a lot of biodiversity. It's also a big part of rituals, art, culture, folklore, and song. Um, it was banned by the British. This is something I'll just keep touching upon these subjects as we move forward. And I'll then tell you about Wild Harvest and what we're doing and how we're predominantly working with the Mahua flower. So Maduka longifolia, or a variety latifolia, is the scientific name of the tree. It grows in a tropical dry deciduous forest in mostly in central India, but it's grown like it's there in over 15 states, also in Nepal and Sri Lanka. It can grow over 18 meters tall, and it's known by various different names across the country. The flowers bloom from March to May, and the fruits happen from June to August. The flowers are used for food and for drink. The fruits are edible and they're also cooked. The seeds are used for making cooking oil and as well as body oil. The leaves are 12 to 20 centimeters long, the simple leaves. And the bark also has some medicinal value, right? So that's why Mahua is known as a wish granting tree because it's used for so many various aspects, right? And various parts of the tree are used for various functions, not only by humans but also by animals and biodiversity. So here's the sloth bear that graced our camera trap in Jonha and was munching away on some mahua flowers. So mahua trees also support a lot of biodiversity. They are pollinated mostly by bats, and also by like other birds as well. And the seed dispersal mostly happens by again bats and some birds as well. Here's a paradise flycatcher when the flowers are almost gone from the tree on the left. That's a male paradise flycatcher. And we also saw a pair of flycatchers building a nest on a mahua tree, which was quite beautiful. Here's our friend the porcupine again munching on mahua. So there's a lot of biodiversity which relish mahua flowers. There are also a lot of, I think, wrong notions of elephants getting drunk by eating mahua flowers, and so sloth bears as well getting drunk on mahua flowers. Not scientifically proven, but yeah, I also can't say anything for sure. But they do definitely enjoy eating the mahua flowers. It's also very prevalent in art and folklore, especially Gond artwork. Here's a artwork by Mr. Kailash Pradhan, a Gond artist, and got this painting from a collective called Lok Sutra. They printed this, and this sort of really, paints a beautiful picture for us. There's animals, there's humans, there's music, there's art, there's elephants, there's so much what tree supports, and it's a very generous tree, which has been, in India for centuries. And So that was Ashrin Dadi, one of our community partners, singing a beautiful song on Mahua. In a 4 square kilometer radius, we've recorded over 5 songs on Mahua. So it's really like, I think, the more you learn about it, the less I feel, in terms of how much Mahua has, and so many stories, art, folklore songs around Mahua. And which brings me to how something so beautiful can be made infamous by something, right? Like the mahua flowers, they were first classified as intoxicants by the Bombay Abkari Act in 1879, and then in 1892 the British banned the collection, storage, and sale of mahua flowers. Right now, I think this has a lot to do with how mahua started disappearing from plates. It was looked down upon in many ways, and even till date, a lot of people just associate mahua with bad liquor or something that's bad, which is so strange to me. And that's a major connotation around Mahua, which can be dated back to sort of colonial times, and we're still reeling under that hangover. Now coming to Wild Harvest. So I hope that gave you a little overview or just a general overview of Mahua. And coming to Wild Harvest, we are focused on the Mahua flower, and we're an early stage social enterprise that, that are working on ethical harvesting, processing, and marketing of food grade Mahua flowers. And our goal is to unleash the true potential of Mahua flowers for culinary, nutrition, community, and conservation purposes. Um, this is again a mahua tree in January, February, laden with leaves before they will fall to the ground and the flowers will emerge. And we partner with communities in Jharkhand, and we distribute sustainable harvesting kits, which are basically nets to be put under the trees. I will talk about this as we go forward. Now, these are different stages of the mahua flower. Again, when you think of a flower, a mahua doesn't look like your conventional flower. It's a, it's a, it's a, very unique flower. It grows from like a small bud to 2 to 3 feet tall, and it has a very unique shape. 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 And it has a to blooms into something like this from March to May, depending on the tree. And then the flowers fall naturally. It's like rain falling when Mahua flowers fall. It's quite beautiful. And yeah, the problem we were realizing was how conventionally how Mahua flowers were being harvested were just being used for liquor, and it was not reaching the plates. It was a lot of that had to do with harvesting practices. Usually, what we saw was, at least in Jharkhand, the leaf litter under the tree was burned. This is done to make the collection of the flowers easy. This results in forest flowers, and it also takes a lot of time for communities to pick it. Now, I should add that communities have no other option but to do this because they're not provided the resources to sort of put nets or this has been going on for a while. Now, after that, the flowers, since they fall naturally, fall on ash-laden ground, which contaminate the flowers, and also the juice spills out, it loses flavor, it loses nutrition, and then they're dried on roads or in angans. That's what generally happens in Jharkhand. My experiences are mostly based around Jharkhand. Again, dried in angans, and you can see it gets contaminated, like on ash, then being dried on ground. It just leaves mahua to just be used as liquor. We started with a very simple intervention of partnering with communities and providing them with nets, putting nets under the trees. We're not the only ones doing it. There are a lot of people in India who are doing this. The flowers fall on the nets. This, again, affects two, three things. One is first, like the leaf litter under the tree is saved. It doesn't need to be burned. It saves a lot of time for communities where it would take 2 hours per day per tree to collect mahua flowers. It reduces to around half an hour to 45 minutes. Kids can go to school. Forest fires are saved, and communities save a lot of time and energy. And also, production increases because a lot of the flowers which used to be consumed by cattle are saved. Also, its collection time reduces. These are able to collect more. And you can see the quality of the flower also, of course, right? The juices don't spill out. It's clean. We sort of dry them like you dry coffee. So we work with communities again to set up these machans. And here you can see different stages of the mahua flower being dried. And this photo kind of sums up the harvesting process. There are two mahua trees in the background. The flowers fall on the nets. They're collected, and communities get flowers from all around. We help them get the flowers to a central unit, and we dry them scientifically and get them lab tested so they're food safe. And you can see just by looking at the pictures and comparing the flowers, right? It, of course, enhances the quality of the flower. And then we store them properly. We check for moisture and end up sending them for storage and making all our products with these flowers. Again, the goal is to, get mahua back on plates and pattals. Mahua is also disappearing on plates and pattals from in communities who harvest the flower. The elders have memories of eating mahua flowers, but usually the kids in the younger generation have stopped eating mahua flowers. So we're working on a double-pronged approach to sort of make mahua a popular, like an ingredient for urban use, as well as promoting its food use locally, for which we do multiple workshops with the communities. And yeah, so this is our team, this is our family. I'm grateful to like all our community members without whom this would not be possible. And like everyone who's been a part of me, all people working on Mahua, and I see a lot of familiar faces, be it a book I read on Mahua or an article, or, like seeing Manisha cook with Mahua, everything's inspired us. And really grateful for everyone who's been a part of this journey, team members and community members, Kailash ji, Bhavna, Hannah, Bharshita, Susan, naming names, but I'm going to stop. But yeah, we've had a small impact so far. We've saved over 13,000 hours for our community partners. This is a rough estimate, and we've also saved around 10 acres of forest from forest fire and rough estimates. So please take it in jest. And thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Edible Issues, Shivani, Elizabeth, uh, Bhairavi, and the whole team for making this happen, because I think we really need to build a community and talk about Mahua in a very, open and like talk about all the facets that Mahua has. And yeah, glad to be here, and thank you so much for giving me the space to talk.
Thank you, Rishabh. That was really great. Um, in keeping with that momentum, actually, I would like now to invite Aparna Pallavi to share a little bit. Glad you were able to join, Aparna. There was some technical stuff, but it's great to see you here. Aparna Pallavi is an environmental journalist and a researcher of indigenous knowledge systems and food systems. She's today sharing a little bit about stories of Mahua from as daily nutrition and as memory in Adivasi lives and cultures. So I'll hand over to you.
Oh shit. Oh, shit. Hi, can you hear me now? Okay. So, I'm sorry I couldn't join immediately. My home Wi-Fi gave out. Suddenly, I don't know what happened. So I'm working from a hotspot. So, uh, Mahua stories in daily life, when I was in the field working on Mahua, I used to notice some of the same things. I just heard some of, and I missed everything before that. So I used to listen to the Adivasis. That was my biggest thing. And I used to notice how much ambiguity there was in attitude, and I've not been in touch for quite some time. But shame around eating Mahua. And there was this knowledge that Mahua is useful. Mahua gives strength. Mahua builds immunity. So it was both. It was both. It was shame as well as appreciation, as well as a lot of nostalgia. So that was very beautiful. There was one story which I always tell. There was this man in a village in Japan who I used to talk to a lot. And the first time we talked, he kept talking entirely about how Mahua it was shameful to eat Mahua. It takes too long to cook, it is not good, it is this, it is that, it is that. And I was listening to him. And at one point I said, exactly what you are saying it's nutritious. You're saying that it's healthy. You're saying it kept your stomach for a very long time. And that when you don't eat it, you really feel the lack in your diet. You feel the difference in your physiology compared to. So what is it that makes Mahua a thing of shame for you to eat? And he said it takes very long to cook. And I said, okay, what does that imply? Like, no rice we can cook quickly. It is poor food. So I said, does mean that you can't cook something fast. You have to work hard to cook it. That makes it a poor food. And he said yes. And when he said yes, he was surprised, He himself was surprised by his yes. Because and then he said, I had never thought of it this way. I said, but the communities are fixed this way. I mean, even if you don't realize it. He said, yeah, anything that involves hard labor is poor food. And we don't want to be seen as the poor. There is this very intricate, very deep-rooted shame issues that how people decide to eat mahua or not to eat mahua. That was one of the things that I noticed everywhere. I have talked about it on my TED Talk. And these are some of the intricacies that were noticed in the field. When you're studying, when you're not actually working, you're working with it, I'm so proud of them. So happy that this is happening. But meanwhile, I would really like people to look at these cultural aspects, and somewhere help break this shame. Another thing that I would like to happen now is maybe bringing Mahua to the everyday kitchen in urban areas. I mean, not restaurants, not fancy places. And I'm talking several years back, Please remember, I'm talking from several years back. Because of my health issues, I have not been able to work on this for quite some time now. So, I'm suggesting is look at the Mahua recipes in the arts areas. I mean, that's some of the work that I used to do when I was working. Like, for example, in UP, I came across one recipe called Mahua. It was nothing except curd and mahua. You were supposed to mahua, the soak it with curd. And now in the modern world, nobody wanted to eat it. So we worked with a Dalit group. I was pretty much a loser and I was just doing my own research. And I worked with a group of Dalit women who were there in that area. It was quite a few years back. And we made two variations. In the first one, we added some jaggery. Because, the mahua sweetness, once you have boiled it, or once you have soaked it for 15-20 minutes, it is very subtle. And people today, they are used to sugar, they are used to sugary sweets. They don't appreciate that taste anymore. If you go to other sugar is not easily available, you might see people appreciating the sweet. But not areas where sugar. So we just added some jaggery. We did nothing else. And that dish became delicious for children along with and they ate it happily. The other dish that we prepared was again very simple. And these are like, really the kind of stuff that person in the cook, especially most of the people cooking are women. And they don't have time. They have their offices, they have their jobs, they have home, and the men really don't help out. So, simple way. A dish that we made was we added some salad to it. Some cucumber, some onion, some tomato, and a few spices. there was curd, there was mahua, it became a raita. And everybody was, the adults were very happy eating that. I would like to see more of that sort of thing happen. And so that Adivasis can just bring some of their mahua to a city, some kind of certifications, because there are legal what ifs to get through. So have some safeguards, and they could just bring their mahua, the nicely clean, dried mahua, beautifully processed. If they can bring it to the city and sit for a fair price, right in the shops, right in the kirana shops. Somebody comes, they buys 1 kg of mahua and takes it home. They make mahua ki puran puri, mahua ki puri. At the time I prepared 35 dishes mahua, and all of them very simple ones. I worked with chefs 2 or 3 times, and those dishes were so complex. They were good to eat once in a while, and that would be it. I hope the chefs who are here today, I don't know how long I'll be able to sit, but there are chefs who are here, if they could talk about it, maybe you can send me a recording, I would really like to do. But meanwhile, what I would like to see happen is this, that it can comes that is easily assimilable into the kitchen. And once it starts moving into the urban kitchen, for Adivasis, the tradition of eating mahua becomes much easier, because they somewhere, what I feel is they somewhere need a precedent, they somewhere need a sense of belonging. I've heard the story everywhere. Everywhere I've gone, I've heard this divide between, on the one hand, mahua is highly nutritious, mahua is highly good for health, good for strength, good for everything, easy to get, plenty of availability. And on the other hand, this whole thing of not belonging if we eat mahua. So that is what I would like to see. I mean, everywhere this one story, man, that it is poor food. Maybe if it can go into the houses of people, not the upper middle class. Yes, the upper middle class can also eat it. They can also take it into restaurants, make it into very special dishes. Fine. But the classes that Adivasis are likely to come across, the class into which their educated children would go, the class into which, if they got into a good school, the kids would meet, where the classes which interact with the Adivasi community regularly, if it could go into those classes, and if the approval of those classes could be had, I think it would become so much easier for Adivasis to reclaim their tradition, because, when they hold on to the tradition, they don't feel belonging with the outside world. And belonging with the outside world is so important for the Adivasi community now. It can't be overstressed. So this is my 2 cents in 5 minutes. I'm here for some time. I'm here as long as I feel okay enough to listen to somebody.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing. I know that your health has not been the best, right? I really appreciate that you've been able to join us and share all that you have. Before we move into discussion and questions, I would like to invite now our third speaker to share, again from the research and fieldwork perspective, a little bit. Abhijit Dey is a PhD scholar at HE and founder of projectmahua.com. And he's sharing a little bit on the ecological and cultural perspectives from Adivasi communities in Eastern India and from his own fieldwork and research.
Hello, Shivani. Hello, everyone. So first of all, I'm not going to reiterate all the thank yous, but yes, all the thank yous. And I heard written about Aparna ma'am's work, but it's great to hear from her. Okay, so, it's a researcher's delight when they found that the things they are dealing with has so many people concerned about. So special thank you for that. I'll quickly go through my slides. It's a very crisp. I'd like to be very focused because most of the things probably we are already aware of, but I'll try to get into some academic perspective over here. So as we know Mahua Matters and why, because so many lives dependent on it, so much of indigenous knowledge involved in it, so much of wildlife biodiversity are there, and of course so many trees. They are so huge, 200 years, 500 years old. So of course Mahua is important, but wait, how many are there? Quantification or having a figure is very important. It's a key to many logs. If you go to the bureaucrats, number matters. Policymakers, number matters. Interests, if you want to lure investors, number matters, and of course funding agency like students like me. So for them, the number matters. But unfortunately, we lack answers. Let me give you a few quick examples. A 1975 research paper citing a 1953 report published by CSIR stating that we had around 85 lakhs of Mahua trees in India. But today we don't have any credible information. A 2018 article, it's not a research article, but a popular article, referring to an updated report. It is again not a scientific publication or a peer-reviewed publication. That report was saying that it is around 75 lakh Adivasis are related with Mahua as a livelihood. But hold on a minute and think. This time, in the central Indian belt, the estimated Adivasi population is around 7 crore. So just 10% of them involved with Mahua as a livelihood. I think it's a gross misrepresentation, underrepresentation. Biodiversity. Just now we have seen that sloth bears and porcupine in Rishabh's presentation. We have reports of elephants. We know that bats do pollinate and disperses their seeds. We have seen few birds like parakeets, green pigeons on these trees, but again sporadic, and we don't have any concrete information. Say for example, I have seen around 20 plus different kinds of birds, and all of them are insectivores. Mahua tree. Probably you haven't heard of it. 20 plus different bird species on the Mahua tree just to eat insects. And we don't have any information of how much biodiversity is there related with Mahua. So in these conditions, when I went to the field, I came across these. Mahua is being felled, being lopped, being chopped, and for different reasons. So in these background, these questions, how many, is become even more pertinent. So this work deals with, to some extent, how people are interacting with Mahua and its different resources. Flower is just one of them. How the growth rate of Mahua is doing, how the population of Mahua is doing, that's one question. And I'm also trying to connect my work with the section of the biodiversity because it's huge. How different bird communities are interacting with Mahua trees. That's one. So having these things set up from an academic perspective, which I think have much relevance for all of us. The question is, what could be the solutions? It may be a solution that having a better information may lead us to a informed action. And of course, stages like this, initiatives like this, opening the field Mahua Matters is, I mean, I have seen plus 85 plus of us over here, and most of us have some inkling to Mahua. That's why we're here. In the audience, I know them at least very much involved dealing, practicing with Mahua. So this could be the solutions. But over here, I'd like to reiterate what I always keep telling myself. Whatever we are doing, be it knowledge generation, be it working with the people, it's our compulsion to have fair share with them. It's not our compassion. We went to them. They didn't come to us. So this fair share is not only in terms of economic return. The fair share is not only having their names, having the name of the communities, the villages, where the knowledge is being generated in research papers, particularly this is for myself. So recognition is another key important thing over here. When we want a fair treatment over here. And this recognition leads to this very important and sensitive issue of identity. Over here, I'll complete my presentation with one of my field note relates with the identity. So Sidhu and Kanhu are the great freedom fighters who hailed from cities. When I've just started my work, I had seen Mahua flower as offering at the feet of Sidhu Kanhu statue. And if you think for a while on these has so deeper. The problem Aparna ma'am was just telling about, it is kind of give us a hope of a solution. These people are reclaiming their ground, reclaiming their identity, reclaiming their Mahua. And they're not just passive subjects anymore. They are doing it active agents, reclaiming their ground. So I conclude. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. So with this, we've heard from the first three of our speakers today. So now we have heard, we're moving back to the board. For those of you who are not on the board, you'll be able to see that we've been making notes of all the insights, incredibly rich insights that our speakers have been so far on these post-its. And now what we are also simultaneously doing is to try and place those insights at different points of the map and cluster them. So I would love to open this space up for conversation amongst all the rest of you. So if you have questions, insights, reflections to share based on what we've done so far, please feel free to drop them on post-its on the board or drop them in the chat or raise your hand and then we will be able to unmute and share to the room. So if there's anyone that would like to unmute and share questions or thoughts, please go right ahead. We do have some questions that have come up in the chat that we're going to put onto the board. But one of the conversations, the questions in the chat was about the difference between indica and longifolia, which is something that both Rishabh and Abhijit have been able to share a little bit about in terms of about the two of them being two different species and the nomenclature and the leaves of one being of latifolia. Do you instead of me reading this, Abhijit, would you like to jump in and just share distinction for the group?
Yes. So the question was, what is the difference between Madhuka indica and Madhuka longifolia? So this is one very burning question for me because I have to deal with things with scientific rigor. So let me clarify. So Madhuka longifolia. So try on this part. There are different species of mangoes. So the scientific name of mango is Madhuka indica. Now there are different species, different varieties. Madhuka, sorry again, Mangifera indica variety, Siddhi. Mangifera indica, variety Alfonso. These are not scientific names, I'm just giving them. Similarly, there are two primary species with Madhuca longifolia, variety latifolia, Madhuca longifolia, variety longifolia. So when we say Madhuca longifolia, it is only the variety longifolia we are meaning.
Okay.
Now, when I'm saying Madhuca longifolia, variety latifolia, I'm particularly pointing one particular species. Now, Madhuca longifolia, variety latifolia is similar or also known as Madhuca indica. So to be on the safer side, you can say Madhuca indica or you can say Madhuca longifolia. Now, when it comes to scientific rigor, you have to very specific with the context with which you are referring to. But when it comes to people, when it comes to daily use, you don't need to bother about it. That's all. And being different variety, there are slight differences like the leaf size, leaf width, the flower size, the taste of the flower. There could be different slight differences, but not much.
Thank you. We have another question to the room again, is from Vijay, I believe. Difference in the quality of oil or flour, meaning do they taste different in any way or is it negligible? Rishabh, you're also welcome to jump in, as well as Aparna if she's able to.
For the flower, we've noticed like variance in flavor, shape, size quite a lot from different trees. There are various like shapes and sizes. Like again, like thanks for that, Abhijit, because we always thought the latifolia are the more broader sort of flowers, and the longifolia are more like the longer flowers, right? Again, there is a lot of confusion around it, but in general, like from a non-scientific lens, the flavors vary a lot from tree to tree, and even the shape, size vary. Mostly, either they're long and like photos. I can share that on the Jamboard later, and some are like rounder and sort of stout.
Great, thanks. Did you also, okay, we have a couple of more questions coming in. Is there any government involvement or support in relation to developing or building infrastructure, logistics, or supporting Mahua cultivation or promotion?
I'll just quickly add that in terms of cultivation, we are not in a situation that we need any support. Wherever there are trees, there are a lot of trees. I think everyone who knows about Mahua will agree with me. But yes, infrastructural support from the system in terms of particularly liquor, which we get only in the direction of liquor if we start talking about it. Help from government is always helpful because 2 years back there's been a Mahua conclave by the MP government that talked about not only the liquor but all other edibles, all other aspects of Mahua. This kind of initiative and better policy, better I'll say involvement of the excise policy would have been helpful. Like as the Aparna ma'am said that it won't be difficult for the people to get fresh Mahua flower in a kirana shop in an urban setup. But for that, we need policies, or rather, we need clear cut saying that this is not a problem. There are a lot of ambiguity. There are a lot of gray areas that the people in the administration or somewhere else in the system took I mean, I'll say advantage of. So of course, yeah, that kind of help is very much needed from the government.
Um, a question from Tansha about also the ecology and biodiversity. About bats and Mahua specifically, is there any folklore or stories about the role that bats play? And if we were to imagine a future where bats are threatened, what might that mean for the Mahua tree?
Okay, so thanks for the asking. First thing, I haven't come across any folklore that's I wish I would have. Second, yeah, if bats populations are being threatened, it will be a really great really in terms of dispersion because for sure for the dispersion, bats are the known dispersal agents that can carry a seed, say around 7 kilometers away from a parent tree, but mostly it's around 100 meters. Of course, if bats are not there, it will be a really natural regeneration of Moho will be under question for sure.
I'd also at this point like to say if any of our other speakers or participants here would also like to jump in and sort of share their thoughts or answer some of these questions, please feel free to do that either through the chat.
Can I answer one of the questions? Whatever I had heard, there was a question about how the Mahua flower is different in different species, right? Or something like that. See, I found something really interesting. That every area, because I went around a large part of India doing my, and I saw that in every region there were different distinctions between different kinds of Mahua flowers. Like in Gujarat, I went to Dahod district, and there it was a very straight cut binary. Daru ka mahua, khane ka mahua. Daru ka mahua, when it fell, it burst open. The flower, it had a very thin skin. And then by the time it dried and you picked it up, it looked like something irregular. Khane ka mahua was very beautifully round and it had a strong skin, so it didn't burst. In Maharashtra, there were three places. So there was a big distinction between the round mahua and the long. And some places people said the round mahua is sweet, so it should be places the other way around. So there were so many, maybe subspecies with it. And the most interesting I found in UP. In UP, they had names for the various subspecies.
Oh, wow.
Like there was a name Lampuchia, there was another name Lagria. There were several mahuas that were very tinny. And those
I'm sorry, I think we lost your audio. Sonia, are you here?
Maybe we can take Aparna's question once she comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we have a lot of questions coming in, and some of these will also connect to the speakers that are coming up next. What we are doing is recording all the questions that are coming in the chats. But I would also like to acknowledge that the part of the goal of this session also is to explore what questions we all collectively have, and we may not necessarily find all the answers in during this session, but I'm excited to see where that curiosity will lead us and will lead this conversation. So please keep the questions coming and continue to share inputs and thoughts. We would like to now move to our next two speakers. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Manisha Oraon, who's the co-founder of the Open Field. She's a champion of indigenous food systems and rural entrepreneurship. And she'll talk a little bit about how women are reclaiming Mahua through food. and storytelling. So over to you.
Hello, hello, hi. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Hi, hi. Thank you so much, Shivani. Thank you so much, Rishabh, and Edible Issue, the whole entire team for inviting me here. And yes, and Johar to everybody, as we say in Jharkhand. Jharkhand ke gaon se Johar hai, sabhi ko. So I'm Dr. Manisha, and I'm the co-founder of the Open Field, and I've been working in rural sector for last 8 to 9 years, and particularly in Jharkhand, back to my hometown. I belong from an Urao tribe. I've been working here for almost 5 years now. I've been working throughout India and most of it in the rural setups. So, an interesting topic today, Mahua. Been looking forward to join this conversation for a pretty long time with so much of intellect people and something which is so much sacred to us, Mahua. And it just grows quietly in our forest, yet carries centuries of wisdom and resilience. For many people, Mahua is just a flower, but for us as a tribal, we call it a tree of life. And over the years, the sacred tree has been misunderstood and reduced to a stereotype, particularly in the aspect of local liquor or a social stigma. Just to start my journey with, I'll give a small introduction how I moved back to my town Ranchi and in and around to my ancestral villages. I've been working around it, and since 2019, I began connecting with our forest. As dental surgeon, I've been working in rural camps. I've been seeing widespread causes of anemia throughout in the tribal belt. That is one point of aspects I would like to focus upon. That is something I truly believed, and I saw it in the areas while I was holding medical camps all around. And through these conversations with some amazing women and SAGs I have met as of now, and I've learned Mahua was once a source of nourishment. It has helped them to combat even diseases like anemia. And they used to soak it early in the morning and have it in the empty stomach. Urban people have it like a kishmish in early morning, right? Raisins in the early morning. Us, it was never there. It was mahua which was a source of nourishment. So so that was a discovery. This is one such discovery which had sparked something among our partners, and we started initiating our concept of the open field. We started the concept of agrotourism initially, serving meals from the forest ingredient, over time telling people about stories of Mahua. What do we do them in the festivals like Sarhul, Karma? All those festivals are the festivals of nature. And that's when we realize what immense potential it has. And I could see people around us building up these amazing products like Rishabh and all other teams who've been serving Mahua in the mainstream now. This constant, practices have been taking ahead. As for us, it means a lot. Plus, Mahua's truth is far richer. I mean, beyond the drink, Mahua give us more. Starting from its flower, Mahua has been a constant source of our natural sugar. If you go back, I've been hearing stories from lot many people around, and I could see that we never had sugar. So Mahua was a source of natural sugar for us. And yes, I could see some questions, and it has been documented. It has been put into research about what are the glycemic indexes there. It has a low glycemic index. So all those research articles have been reading throughout it. Our team also have been documented all the lost cuisines of these kinds of ingredients, specifically Mahua, and why those dishes have not been coming out. So specifically when I said like women used to eat it in the empty stomach to fight anemia, there were syrups which was made out of those flowers which was used to soothe sore throat. So these are a couple of ingredients. Then there was fruit, and then the big seed of the mahua, when it was crushed, oil used to come, and those oil, we call it dori tail here in Jharkhand, that used to, that has a healing properties, that used to sore muscles and even burns. In winter, it was our cocoa butter, I could say. It was our cocoa butter. So in terms of women, when I talk about tribal women, those were the primary foragers, processors, and even the knowledge keepers of mahua, drying its flour, fermenting them for rituals. Yes, fermenting it was one of the foremost rituals of tribals, what we had it, we believed it from generation. But not only fermentation, it was also used in food and as a medicines. However, Mahua has become like a publicly associated only with local liquor. So when we go to the village, it does smells when you go in the peak season of Mahua, you can have that nice smell of Mahua all around. And you can also, and in some part of the villages, you can also see somebody brewing liquor on those part of it. And according to the policy, we do allowed the tribals are allowed to brew liquor in some quantity, not in the larger quantity, to some quantity. And that was a traditions, and that was also kept via government has also provided some sort of relaxations on that terms. But then also saw that it was only looked upon towards the tribal as a social stigma, as a deep social stigma that we are only brewing liquor. What about that we are eating it in form of kheer? I mean, in form of celebrations, in form of snacks, local snacks. I could say, as Aparna ma'am said, like it was poor man's food because it comes from a hard labor, right? So I will say about a couple of more dishes like Mahua Lattha. So Mahua Lattha was a dish where it used to be, in a the earthen vessels. It used to cook for hours, especially with tamarind seed, and the syrup of that people used to have it throughout the village celebrations. And there was Mahua Kheer in Santhal region. Mahua Kheer was one of the major prominent dishes used to have them, and there was Mahua Roti. So Mahua Roti along with a bit of wheat flour. It was basically wrapped around the sal leaf, and then basically steamed, and that is what was the source of nourishment in the ancient ages, and it definitely continues in some part of the villages in Jharkhand, but yes, not very frequent in most of the part. So there were some wonderful dishes which was still there, and thankfully our team was able to document couple of them, and we've been able to help those women to actually tell us about more and more about those dishes, and to procure more and more mahua from them, the cleaner aspect of it, and I could tell more and more about it. And Mahua is just not a tree or just a humble tree, yet it's a powerful tree, as we call it, like a tree of life. It does meet the fundamental needs of feed, fodder, and fuel, plays an important role in tribal economy. But the reality is, Mahua is under threat. The quality is declining in some regions due to poor preservation methods introduced over times. As the market suggests, the market demands for the sourcing of mahua only for the basis of liquor. That is also one aspect of it. Worse, its value has been diminished in the public eye, and it's towards primarily tribal women has been left out of the formal system and support structures. Yet, these women are now reclaiming Mahua. They have been adapting age-old knowledge with new innovations, using nets to collect Mahua flowers more efficiently and hygienically. They have been creating products like Mahua laddus. You've been seeing in the market about Mahua laddus, I believe. And there are Mahua teas, which is coming out, and Mahua snacks, which is coming out now. Not to modernize Mahua, but to embrace it, to enhance it, would say. Through food, they are telling their stories, keeping traditions alive and earning dignified incomes. There have been changes which I've been seeing in all those years I've been working as of now. Yes, there have been changes which I've been seeing. Yet we have to acknowledge the challenges which is coming out. In some areas, the quality of mahua is declining due to loss of traditional preservation practices. Without storage solution and better awareness, the full potential of Mahua cannot be realized. That's where there's an urgent need to bring modern interventions, not to replace the traditional wisdom, but to enhance it. We need cleaner processing, year-round storage, traceable supply chains, and stronger market access, I believe, specifically for these products which is coming out from the tribal regions, specifically from the belts of forest belts of all these regions of India. And Mahua can be more than seasonal, I believe. It can be a symbol of tribal economic transformation, providing those sustainable incomes to the women who have been the primary foragers, as I said in the beginning. They have been the primary processors, the primary collectors, I believe. And much more about it is about reclaiming identity. So, as Rishabh said, it's about a movement. So, this is also, I would like to add, this is more about revival is more like a movement. And from Jharkhand, organizations like Wild Harvest taking the lead, I feel so proud. And also for our team from the open field to bringing it out, to bringing the world out. So, and I would also like to focus upon it that we've been taking Mahua to supper clubs, to showcasing it in 5 stars, and even making taking it to the IFA, where even we had celebrities tasting Mahua, specifically Shah Rukh Khan. Also, I wish I had camera that time, but I I did not. So they were also very much surprised to see that it's coming from the forest. And and even if you soak it, it becomes like a flower. I believe Rishabh will agree to me that even a dehydrator, once you soak it in the night and morning, it becomes like a flower. Same juiciness will come out of it. And this is what about I believe women have been leading the change, because as my organization of the open field, with my amazing partners and with my amazing team, but all these teams have been held together by a group of women who have been this primary processors of whatever forest ingredients we've been trying to put the world out. And this is what leading this change, Mahua, back into the world through food innovations, and sustainable value chain. And then the biggest change I've been seeing, that women are now using solar powered dehydrators and making Mahua laddus and Mahua syrup. And these are the things which I've been seeing through my grandmothers and animas, that they have been using syrups at their homes. And even now we have syrups at our homes that they used to give us, that have it like 2 spoons, just if you have a sore throat or something like that. So this is this is not just a transformation, but more like a movement. I believe women now are not just laborers, because I belong from that community, and my families are still my expanded families are still those families who still gathered and forage Mahua as of now. So we're not just laborers or participant now. We're now, innovators and entrepreneurs, and we feel like we are like the guardians of the biodiversity, which we are leading, and with the modern aspect of what people have been talking about. And moreover, Mahua is no longer seen through the narrow lens of liquor, but more like a climate smart, culturally sacred, and economically powerful forest ingredient. This is the future we must build, not by reclaiming Mahua, not just as a resource, but a rightful legacy. That's something which I could say, and I'm very proud to see people have been gathered together talking about Mahua. Thank you.
That was really powerful and inspiring, and it was really great to hear your sort of perspectives, both from what you're building and your personal sort of associations with Mahua. With this, I think building on how we can safeguard stories, tell stories, and imagine new stories around Mahua, I would like to invite Smriti Raghumalan, who is the author of a romantic fiction novel called The Call of the Mahua, in which the region of Jharkhand plays the backdrop to this story. So I'd invite her to talk a little bit about how Mahua can be explored through storytelling, fiction, and folklore.
Yeah, my audio is clear? Yeah,
Yes.
so hello everyone. First of all, let me start by saying thank you to Shivani and the team at Edible Issues to have found me through my novel, The Call of the Mahua. I don't know how I did it, because it's not easy to find a self-published author of fiction. We are close to anonymous. So I would like to start by sharing the idea of integrating Mahua in a fiction novel, how it came about. So it was during the COVID time, and I had taken a break from my teaching assignments. And like all those who were indoors and reconnecting with their hobbies, I was contemplating writing a romance novel, being a fan of Jane Austen and Betty Niels. So I was at this command hospital, Bangalore, on one of our visits for my father's consultation. And my father is retired from the Indian Army, and command hospital has a sprawling campus. And in one of the lanes, he said, Mahua tree is around. I can smell it. It's intensely sweet. Later at home, I pursued the matter of Mahua, and he said, they 50 mahua trees at Patra at Palamu on the banks of Amanat River, which is a branch of Koil River, and at his ancestral home. Very, very tall trees. And he reminisced that early morning, there used to be a white blanket of mahua flowers on the ground under the trees, and his mossy used to take a basket and go collect the flowers early morning and evening, and the children would go along and they would compete with the goats and cows to collect the flowers. So, drawing inspiration from my dad's connected roots in Jharkhand and his of Mahua, I decided the hero of my novel would be from the tribes, and I chose the Orang tribe, actually. And since my first work assignment was at a heart hospital as a dietitian, I wanted the hero to be a doctor. And that's how I got the setting to be a military hospital where, of course, a mahua tree would be around. And the period it is set in is in 1970s. So next, I want to talk about the kind of research that went into getting aspects of Mahua incorporated in the story. So I'm really overwhelmed with the kind of presence we have on the panel today. We have speakers who actually work with Mahua. They are in the field, touching lives. Most are collaborating with the Adivasis using Mahua. I'm afraid my research has been more on the academic kind, the secondary research from research papers and newspaper articles on Maduka longifolia. How mahua was probably misused earlier to make illicit liquor, and how women folk made products now from dried mahua flowers, such as edible laddus, candies, pickles, jams, jellies, syrups, and sweetener like honey. I was amazed at the amount of work that has been done in this field of getting mahua in the mainstream. So in the novel, I do have an NGO which is empowering the women in this field, based all on fiction, of course. And I found that almost all parts of the trees are used, especially by the Adivasis. And I think that aspect has been touched upon by all other speakers, so I will skip that. And in fact, I came across very interesting things during my research, such as two rare books written in 1911 and 1915, namely Kuruk Grammar by a German, Han Ferdinand, and Orangs of Chota Nagpur, Their History, Economic Life, and Social Organization by Dr. Sarat Chandra Roy. So, and then I set about looking out for around people who could further authenticate whatever research I had done. And once my story was ready, and what do you know, I find a professor of culinary sciences from Orang tribe who was my colleague during my first teaching assignment about 2 decades ago. So he not only ratified my research himself, but also onboarded his wife, who is from the Munda tribe, and his elder brother too. And I felt really surprised when he told me that some of the information I had presented through the romantic story about tribal culture was not known to the youth of the tribe, frankly. And the last aspect I want to cover is whether fiction writing or storytelling can help take the message across to the masses about Mahua. So definitely, it's a very strong medium to carry tales and folklore about Mahua or any traditional aspect of our culture and food. Take my example, I got my inspiration to write the novel when Dad started telling me about his stories of his connect with Mahua. Of course, that wasn't fiction. The same way, if we are able to take the stories of Mahua and its products through children's books, fiction novels, tribal folklore, etc., generations will get enlightened about the value of Mahua, the treasure it is for the tribes, and so on. And how many of us even know that Mahua is the only flower in the entire world that is used for the production of a distinct alcoholic spirit in a traditional manner? It's the only flower in the world. Other flowers have been used only as flavorings in beverages. So, in fact, Mahua features on my novel cover as well, and this watercolor painting. I don't know how well you can see. You can see the traditional sohrai also. this watercolor painting also was done by me, and that's the inspiration of Mahua. So I hope you all read the novel, and it's on Amazon in Europe and USA also. So that's from me. This is the novel.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating, and um, I think it's interesting in the context of this conversation also so to explore how we're using storytelling in different ways, right? Whether it's to kind of share a deep historical knowledge and understanding that's so far been personal and lived, versus also potentially imagining new stories and new futures and new possibilities. So from that perspective, hearing from the both of you was really, really incredible. At this point, would be great to again break really quickly to explore and hear from participants any questions, any thoughts, or inputs that you have. If you want to jump in and also respond to something that our speakers have been sharing or any thoughts that you've had that you would like to share, please do. We have some really interesting ones coming up on the board. For example, around this, the spirit itself, someone has shared that in parts of Gujarat, Mahua alcohol is offered to the deity, their Kuldevi Mandir, which I think is interesting because not something you would um, or not something I personally would immediately associate with the state of Gujarat, perhaps. Um, but to see kind of how pervasive it across so many geographies has been interesting. There's also been a couple of questions and conversation about has Mahua been used in Ayurveda, and that the scientific name Madhuka is actually taken from Sanskrit, and I believe I think relates to sweetness and honey. A couple of different questions that I think would be nice to jump to for our speakers. And again, please, all of the speakers, please feel free to jump in if you would like to address any of these. Do people from different regions have different relationships with the mahua tree and flower? For instance, people in cities like Ranchi and people from remote regions in Jharkhand. Dr. Manisha, is this one that you might want to?
Yes, yes, I would. I mean, there's not much of it. We have 32 tribes, as I said. Like, most of the tribes do have consumption of mahua in some form or the other. Different relationships of mahua or the mahua tree. Specifically, when we talk about mahua, I think it's mahua flower or like mahua tree. As Rishabh also said, like each part of the tree has been used for different sort of purposes. So, mahua flower, when we talk about it, so it has a different purpose to it. Some use it for the consumption, some use it for the medical medicine purposes, some use it for food, some use it for liquor, and for particularly mahua tree. When we talk about it, it's a tree which is widely grown in the regions of it. It is not planted or something over there. It's a wild plant. It's a wild tree which is there around in the forest regions of it. I mean, it's usually foraged. It's never like planted and then taken out for the case of plantation or any kind of commercial agricultural aspects of can never done like that. So yes, there are different relationships among different tribes. For example, I would like to say about the as I said about the Santhal tribes, they have been using mahua kheer in many of the regions or to celebrate any functions. And if you look in the regions of Gumla or Netherhat, where the Ural tribes and those are prominent, or the PVTG's tribes like Asur tribes, they consume it like simply boil it with tamarind seeds, or sort of like they don't have the concept of mahua kheer much on that area region. So aspects are different and the use cases are different in different tribes. But again, I mean, if you ask to any of the tribe about mahua tree, they'll always say this, that it's a tree of life for us.
Thank you. There's immediately like three, four other questions that I could follow this up with, all that are on the board from various people. So it's going to with them. One is what are Mahua-based edibles what are the Mahua-based edibles marketed successfully, or any packaged Mahua products that add value as value-added ingredients?
Oh yes, there are Mahua-based edibles which has been marketed success. One such example is here, Wild Harvest. Yes, I would like to say upon that. And in at the open field, whenever people visit us, we also have taken them during the forage season, and we have taken them for a small session of like a Mahua circuit and sort of thing. So yes, the edibles have been marketed successfully, and value added ingredients like what in our restaurants we make, like specifically mahua kheer. People specifically come for that. They've been asking recipes. We've been sharing across it. I think we have another chef here, Harshita. She has been doing an amazing work on it. And yes, there have been more and more efforts which has been putting up from the government side, or to push it more and more. MSP has also regulated, like minimum support price to a farmers, which has been on ground, which they are trying to implement, which hasn't been implemented as of now successfully. I hope it should get implemented soon. And the perspective of Mahua, the first of all, should also be a very strong opinionated one, that perspective of Mahua, that it should be not only used in the side of liquor industry, but also in the food grade. Mahua is something which has to be, the market has to be aware of. There's something called as food grade Mahua, which can be used. So in that way, we are moving towards a successful, marketing of Mahua based edible. But there are companies which have been great.
And definitely lots more that we're excited to explore and talk about in terms of food grade Mahua and ingredients. Two sort of pertinent questions actually that sort of spin off of this very point are, as ethnomedical benefits of Mahua become more popular, or even such value-added marketed products become more popular, do any of you worry that the balance will tip towards overexploitation, as we've seen in other foods? And also, how can we prevent plantation of mahua in non-native environments? Are those things to consider or be concerned about?
Yes, there is a slight worry about that also, because as of now, the trees, specifically when we talk about mahua trees, you only find them in the belt of those tribal populations, or like, the tribal communities. So definitely there's a worry situation also. How can it can be well projected? So the first thing which I would like to focus upon is the women, because they have been the collectors, they have the processors, the SHGs which have been working towards it. And there have been wonderful effort, which I am seeing a positive change. Specifically, I'm talking about Jharkhand as of now, that, we've been working with SHGs. When we talk about, Rishabh also, and I've also consulted through a couple of government organizations, through non-profit organizations. They are particularly working with the non-profit organizations on how well we can take this product ahead. The exploitation should not remain. And on the aspect of that, there has to be a fair market support price, which has to belong to the tribal women, not just to the people promote, if it's the government or something like that. So there has to be equal inclusion of the women who have been doing it, to the farmers who have been doing it. And thankfully we are blessed with sort of things like, these are the trees which belongs to the forest areas of the tribal region. So one such aspect is that women are also eager to learn more about it, to know more about it, to get themselves involved into the modern market demands, or the modern market needs. So they are also aware of it, what I have seen it. There are areas where, things have gone really down in aspects of, when we talk about supply chain of mahua in terms of liquors, or in liquor market or something. There are areas, but improvements have been going, thus, though it is slow, but we can only hope. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the sort of also the desire for conversations like this, is to be able to understand at this juncture where so much excitement is building, like what to keep in mind, both as consumers, as other people that are curious and starting to engage in this space. I have a
Shivani?
question. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. If you can allow me a minute, I'd like to add on this question of exploitation. So exploitation, there are two possibilities. One is exploitation of people, what Manisha ma'am just now answered, and the exploitation or over harvest or over exploitation of the resource itself. Now I have a slightly different take. Now we have trees which is around villages, and there could be trees which is inside the forest. Now till now, my experience is I have seen people do collect the flowers which is in and around villages, and people keep used to collect this flower for a long time. Whatever is not being collected, if it is around villages, all these flowers will be consumed by the cattle. Now, in terms of over exploitation, since the flowers are not being plucked from the tree, but the flowers by themselves fall on the ground and it's taken from the ground, chances of over exploitation of Mahua flower, particularly Mahua flower, is relatively much lesser in terms of other wild grown resources. So of course we need to be very cautious, but since it's simply falling by itself and it's been collected, if not collected, probably will be consumed by the cattle. There could be health benefit for the cattle from these flowers. We may take that away by collecting all the flowers, but from the perspective of the exploitation of the resource, chances are relatively lesser when it comes to Mahua flower in comparison with other wild grown resources.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would also agree to some extent, but also that there's a very traditional aspect to it. That, for example, if you go to villages, the villagers or the families who are there traditionally, they have divided those trees in that, this many trees belongs to one person, this many trees belong to one person family or something like that. This is
Right.
always there
Right.
and traditionally. So exploitation in terms of flowers, particularly, you can't say, but then the exploitation happening to the guardians of the forest, if I could say, in
Yeah.
that
Right.
terms,
Right.
yes.
Right.
My saying is like the exploitation can happen to them because the
Right.
market is
Obviously.
demanding.
Obviously.
A market is also teaching them, telling them that Mahua can only be used it for the liquor purpose. Market is not actually making an awareness about that it can be used for the food grade Mahua, which is a very recent thing, which I think last few years only this has been there, and the
True.
new year.
True.
So that in that way, I think exploitation still remains until they have
Of
this
course. Of
awareness
course.
that
Right.
there's demand for food grade Mahua. So that's something is to look upon. Yeah.
Sorry, can I add a small thing as well? I think totally agreeing to both Manisha and
Mhm.
Abhijit. One thing is the ethno-medical part of it, right? I feel, again, Manisha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever interactions I've been having with rural communities, in a lot of communities, Mahua as food has also disappeared in large
Yeah.
chunks, where
Yeah.
like only the elders of the community have even
They know.
recollection of eating a latha or eating a sija or
Correct.
मतलब सखुआ के बीज के साथ या क्या बोलते हैं इमली के बीज के साथ खाना kids don't like the flavor of mahua what
Yeah.
Aparam was also telling so that whole ethno-medical part is no like if on ground it's disappearing. It's
Yeah. Yeah. I
disappeared
agree.
in many
I agree.
parts. And what Manisha said, the exploitation happens right now when it gets sold for liquor at low prices. And when the value of mahua as food is not realized, exploitation is happening currently. In markets, there are lakhs of tons of mahua available for sale. It's
Yeah.
not that, it's some niche forest ingredient
Yes.
that's not reaching the market. It's reached the market already. So I think when we talk about consuming mahua as food and what everyone has been saying about getting it to the modern or urban plate, it can only add value to the communities. And
Yeah.
as a said, there are mahua is abundant and it over exploitation can happen when like, people start going deeper is to collect every flower possible, but mahua flowers are so abundant, it's physically not possible to
Yeah.
collect everything that mahua gives. It's just not. There will remain for
Yeah.
biodiversity.
It's
Um, you
just
know.
the effort of that awareness we need to On
Yeah,
ground. I mean, it's on ground. We're talking
for
about
sure.
on ground. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think to that point, I think it might be a good moment to talk now about how it is and it can be manifesting on our plates in urban sort of spaces. So to talk a little bit about how we're exploring the culinary sort of facets of Mahua as new consumers of it. I would like to first invite Chef Gresham Fernandez, who's the chef partner at Banderbon, where they're doing some very interesting offerings with both the Mahua spirit and the flour as well, to talk about his experiments and his experiences and thoughts with the flour as an ingredient.
Hello, everyone can hear me? Or did I just go off?
No, can hear you well.
Oh, I'm not used to Zoom and all of that. Anyways, okay, so I'm back on the screen. Yeah, so what's really interesting is everyone keeps saying food grade. I don't know of any other grade because uh, while in the forests in Palgad, I don't know if you can call them forests also. It's collected, and like what Rishabh said was very important. It's the awareness is for whom? It's for us people who are living in cities, in concrete jungles, right? But there is a big divide between what's happening in the towns where Mahua is also, right? How much of the newer generation is actually eating it, and so it comes back to documentation of those recipes or understanding why those things were used and how seasonal they were and how it affected your gut biome and all of those kind of things, right? So when it comes down to tribals and how they eat, you have to understand they eat through seasons and they build their gut biome based on what's available, right? So like monsoon would have a micro season and they would not eat anything that's not in season. They would build up their gut biome to get into that. So it's like, I mean, once you get that conversation on the table, and first of all, people only understand Mahua from the view of it being an alcohol, but not as a food element, and how it has to be processed to be used as a food element, right? So I see myself questioning that then just taking it and making a cake or making a laddu or whatever. There is a process to it of how it's dried, how it's cleaned, how it's toasted, all right. So and it didn't happen in the first year. It's on my fifth year that I'm still working with Mahua, and there are you got to figure out how to use it, right? Which brings me back to not having enough of data of how to process it, right? Like a lot of people come and give you the product, but there is no information about what to use, how to break down the product. So then we have to go down and like it's the process, because then you're working or you're talking to people who don't understand the dialect or don't understand the language. Like for me, there is no way my Marathi is as I think I might be shifted from Maharashtra for my Marathi, but like just speaking to people and tribals uh, in Palgar and all of that, uh, it's very difficult for them to explain how to use it. Like say for example, the mahua fruit is also edible, right? The mahua seed is also dried and then they make an oil out of it. And it comes pre-monsoon, which because it also has high antioxidant properties, and they cook with that, and it's a bitter oil. So holistically, are you using one? I mean, a conversation: are we saving the mahua plant, or are we saving the mahua flower, or does it need saving? Right? Because a lot of conversations when it comes on to chefs, it's about hey, let's make something out of it, or like let's use quinoa and make it famous, or let's use coconut sugar or all of that. All of that's been available in the past, right? Through history, our grandparents have used it and all that. Not quinoa, but other ingredients. And how do you make it available to people in people need to understand that for a lot of them, they don't know what mahua is. They don't know the fact that India used to make or makes an alcohol with the flour. there's this whole educating the public that happens before they eat the product. And sometimes they won't eat the product. Is like, I'm not a fan of a flower. But then you tell them that cauliflower and broccoli is also a flower. An artichoke is a flower, right? Or a caper for that matter. So the idea is like when we work with Mahua, it's like to get those conversations on a plate. Like, okay, can we do a Mahua and caper savory-ish granola that goes, with the dessert? The syrup for sure. Can we make a miso out of it? Because obviously there is a traditional method. Like, why would I work with a traditional method if I'm not expanding the amount of things that I can do with it, right? So it's always built on the framework of what we learn from the tribals, and we keep learning from the tribals, and every tribe has a different way of working with it, right? And the idea is to kind of get a basic idea of how to process it. Like yesterday, I realized that you got to, before you roast it, you got to remove the inside stamen and all of that, right? Which was for the last 3 years we were never doing. But it's a chance conversation, and it's that you need to, like, hey, you got open the flour. So now that's another, like, if I've got like 10 kgs of flowers that I'm making granola, like there's a lot of work to actually clean out the stamen, right? So yeah, so those are the conversations, and we're working on a bunch of things right now. We're using the syrups. For me, my application with Mahua is mainly savory, because in Palghar, because I'm saying Palghar is because I spend the most time over there, and the wild food over there. But they do a savory bhaji actually, which is like spicy. It's got onion and it's got a lot of mahua, and it's called the tree of life. A lot of people have been saying that right now. But the fact is that right from the leaves, the tender leaves, to the oil, to the fruit, to the sometimes even the bark. I don't know, but everything's used. So I mean, so for us, for me, I look as a chef. I'm like holistically seeing use as a whole. Right? There are no recipes as such. We're still working with it now. But we need to figure out. I mean, I need to figure out is like people don't know that Mahua is a flower that is white in color and it's this big, and how it's collected. So it's, I think, education right now, and that's it. Answer questions.
Thanks, Chef. Yeah, I think so much of what you've said is resonating, and it's really interesting to hear that you're playing more with savory applications of something that's so traditionally associated to be so sweet.
Yeah, it's mainly it's like they use it as food also. So it's I mean, the first time I taste, because the first time I was given Mahua, I was like, hey, okay, alcohol. Second time I tasted Mahua was, hey, sweet application. Third time I actually ate it, and then you start realizing, hey, the fruit is as good as an avocado. It doesn't have the same amount of flesh, but it's different and it's nice. And also the leaves, I mean, I think they soak it in water overnight to remove toxicity and then use the leaves. And they actually had they had a situation where there was, for a year, they didn't have rains, and they lived on the plant. And that's why I call it tree of life. And this year, Mara has had a smaller, there's not a lot of Mahua that was collected this year. So there are shifting, the time is changing, all of that's happening and all right now. So obviously with climate change and all of, the belt's going to change. Like Bombay duck is no longer, for example, the fish is moving up towards Gujarat because of all of that, right? So it's, I mean, are we looking 20 years down and say, hey, how are we going to save it now, and we're going to start now? If that's the conversation, then it's something that we got to start having right.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that note, I think would love to throw over to Hannah, who is a chef and consultant, and also, to kind of close the circle, works closely with Rishabh and the Mahua Flowers at White Harvest to explore how it might reflect on menus and from a sort of perspective that's quite cognizant of all of these complex layers. So, Hannah, over to you.
Thanks. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm super thrilled that we're having this conversation. I've been working with Wild Harvest over the past year, trying to figure out exactly what Shivani mentioned. How can we bring Mahua into kitchens, into plates, different, and as she said, it contains so many multiplicities and like multitudes that it's really a big tapestry, and taking into account all these facets of, like the culture, the environment, community, folklore, like folk culture. It's really important. I mean, it was really important for us at the beginning of the process to be intentional with how we go about it, and sensitive, right? Because as we spoke about, there is so much diversity in both the flavor and texture of Mahua. So that gave us a lot of versatility, and provided like basically an open playing field for us in terms of, how to trial it, test it, play with it, all those things. And I think as Aparna mentioned and Dr. Manisha also mentioned, we really wanted to prioritize accessibility for different groups of people. So we didn't want it to just be an ingredient that was used in bougie upper class contexts, right? Like we wanted to be inclusive, we wanted to be accessible to, people in their daily lives, in their kitchens, and also maintain that sense of cultural sensitivity as a consumer, but also as people who are sharing it with commercial spaces. So I think my approach initially was that I was very clear that, okay, I don't want to appropriate traditional recipes, and put them for creation. So we worked mainly on creating original recipes that any cook could prepare. So we did not want to go. While we did create recipes that restaurants could use, or like when we were collaborating with different chefs or people in the F&B, we sort of would explore with them how the ingredient could be used in their context. But overall, like by and large, we didn't want to focus on the restaurant-based route, because we know that chefs are creative and can do their R&D and create for themselves. But mainly, we didn't want to intimidate the average person from using an ingredient that's already either unfamiliar or so stigmatized in their minds. So us, like, that's just kind of where we were coming from in creating recipes, and also taking into account that taste is so subjective, memory is so subjective, culture, like regional culture in India is so subjective, right? So we had to create recipes of a different range, like some where Mahua was really prominent, some where it was maybe a bit more subtle or supportive to other flavors, and like not necessarily dominating. We were also really curious to test that scale, basically, of like how the flavor of Mahua could be primary or secondary, or even just like a kind of an afterthought in a recipe. So it was kind of just like a flavor scale. So actually, before starting to create recipes, me and Rishabh sat down and we tasted like dozens and dozens of different Mahua samples and made a whole flavor profile where we wrote down like flavors, textures, like fully nerded out on it. And there was so much, like, for example, we tasted flowers that tasted reminiscent of even mushrooms. They had this like woody kind of palette, but like this milky texture, like or like a papery texture. We had ones that were more bitter, more sweet, more chewy, we had like more moisture. So there was just such a wide range, and I was like, oh my God, like where to even start, to cook with this? Like there's just so much that can be done. I like Chef Grisha mentioned, like it works really, really well with savories. That was like one of our biggest findings as well, but also in desserts and baked goods as well. So yeah, just to like give you an overview, I've found that it pairs really well with warm flavors. So because it's got a very robust and rich flavor as well. Like it brings a lot of body to any dish. So it goes really well with like chocolate, cinnamon, meats, coconut, especially toasted coconut, spices, any fats. So like, oils, butters, animal fat as well. Acids I found a bit tricky with Mahua. Like some of them, like lemon, for example, like sometimes it can add a nice counterbalance to the Mahua flavor profile. But for example, I tried a Mahua margarita and it got completely washed out by the amount of acid in that cocktail. So it was really fun to see. And like as I was sort of exploring creating different recipes, so many tangents would come out of it. So like we'd be working on something, I'd be like, oh, you know what? Actually, this would like what would happen if we did this to it, and then tried that out. And yeah, it just kind of it spun its own story as it went along, which was actually just a total delight. And I really felt like it allowed us to just really be open and exploring what could come out of it. And the permutation combinations are truly limitless. We also could explore like how it responded to different temperatures, hydrations, different kinds of infusion. So like if we were to soak it in hot water or cold water overnight, just for a few minutes, like what would be the difference in using it into a recipe? So like for example, like if we were to make something and it came out well, we wouldn't just stop there. Like I'd be like, okay, now what if I change it just with this small detail, like what will happen? And then sometimes it was similar, sometimes it would be completely different. So yeah, it was quite interesting. And it wasn't simply about increasing or reducing the amount of Mahua in a recipe. It plays in like a lot of the other elements, like the other ingredients, and like I said, temperature, moisture, like other aspects of a dish. The feedback process was also really, really important in recipe development. So yeah, like I just mentioned, like playing with other elements in the recipe, so not just merely reducing or upping the quantity. The public response that we got when testing and trialing recipes was super warm. People were very, very curious, very interested. Like I was surprised at the amount of people in my immediate circles and communities that were interested and engaged with the conversation. Like it just, again, just reaffirms how the story of Mahua, the conversation around it, is multifaceted and this tapestry, because no one can just taste something that you make without inquiring more about it, like about this inherent inquisitiveness. And people keep asking me over time, oh, what's happening with your Mahua journey? Like, what are you making now? Like, have you done anything recently? So like people want to know more about guys, like how just the average person was really keen and interested. And there's something about it, I think, that resonates for different people. So in creating this recipe range that I had mentioned before, like we did different tiers, I guess, of complications of recipes. So like for the simple approach, we made like Mahua dosa and chutney, just simple shortbread butter cookies using it, or just added it into smoothies or granola or kheer, things that people can just easily wrap their head around. Then we made recipes, I think, that were more interesting for like the home cook enthusiast kind of a person. So like chocolate truffles, Mahua babka, so just using like a brioche dough, weaving it in. We made chicken curry with it, which was incredible. Really, really interesting flavors. And I also brined them and basically made like olives out of them. And that was also quite an interesting surprise. It wasn't like the sweetness kind of diminished, but it was just balanced enough that it added a nice like punch to a cocktail or a salad or a pasta, and it's like, oh, what's that? It's like just on that cusp of being familiar enough that you can wrap your head around it, but having something different that evokes curiosity, right? Just enough novelty. Yeah, the surprise factor. So it's fun. I mean, it's definitely, I think, something that naturally engages people. You don't have to actually do that much. And then we also created some advanced recipes, or took the professional approach and made like a vegan mahua panna cotta, which was really nice. It was really silky and smooth. Just enough sweetness, and again, just enough difference about it, right? That it's like, oh, this is something new, this is something interesting, but it's in a familiar format, right? We also made an old-fashioned cocktail with it, which was mind-blowing. Rishabh wanted us to stay away from using it with alcohol, just to like kind of, not focus on that association and to promote it as a food ingredient. But like I said, I didn't really feel bound by much limitation in this process. So I was like, okay, let's just see what, like, not using mahua as the liquor itself, but as an added edible ingredient in cocktails or as a flavoring in drinks, like how would it be? So I infused the mahua in ghee and then fat washed the bourbon with that ghee. And it was so buttery, smooth, like it was really delicious. And then I had also candied it in some syrup, and we used that as the garnish. So it was like a cherry, like a mahua cherry kind of thing. So yeah, it was just really fun overall. And like I said, so much came out of it. We have a whole catalog, which you can find on the site. But what I wanted to touch upon actually is like the meaning of this whole experience. I think that, as many of the previous speakers already mentioned, representation is so important and crucial in commodifying mahua, because we want to commodify it ethically, sustainably, but like I said, not just focus on those niche markets that need to pay a premium price for it. Like, it needs to be inclusive for all, to stay true to its roots, right? Because it's not really novelty. It's something that is like a grounded, rooted ingredient that's being used, right? So I think the representation of community and cultural diversity, but also regional diversity, is really, really crucial, especially in today's political climate, but also because colonialism is what kind of stigmatized mahua, right? So like, to sort of revive it, I think focusing on the diversity that it holds is really important, as well as biodiversity, because like Rishabh mentioned, it's just part of such a large picture. It's not, you can't look at it as an isolated ingredient, in all these different contexts. Also to represent sustainable food practices that are, like I said, accessible and ethical. Representing non-commercialized food chains that are affordable and that are sustained, especially in the face of climate change and the fact that the environment is changing, and that it's different from year to year, and that is acceptable to a consumer. That consumers can adapt to that, So the whole way we look at food and ingredients in our supply chain has to change from a consumer's point of view as well, of someone who's walking into a restaurant and paying to eat something, and yeah, that brings into play also perspectives on food paradigms, right? Like, how do we go about consuming? How do we go about preparing? How do we go about sourcing? How do we go about producing? So these are all things that need to be taken into consideration, things that we've tried to hold throughout this whole process as well. And it's really been incredibly fulfilling. I think just to wrap up, I want to say that mahua is a great substitute for sort of any dry fruit in any recipe. It'd be great in like a pulao, a biryani, even like a barbecue sauce, things like that, because it adds so much richness and robustness to any dish. Yeah, I'd love to see it used in pastry, like for people to make ganache with it, or pastry creams or things like that. And of course, traditional Indian dishes, I think, yeah, really the sky's the limit. And yeah, just to end, I'd love to invite participants to share their experiences with flavors, and like associations with mahua, and how maybe they've used it in ways that have been interesting. And if you've seen similar ingredients come into public light, or if you know of any other similar ingredients that need more representation.
Absolutely. I think you've given us a lot to think about, Hannah. That was really great. Just to do a time check, I just wanted to share in case anybody might need to drop off that as I mentioned earlier, I think the a big objective of this meetup today really has been to raise a lot of questions and to see what we want to and need to be asking as we move forward in this space and in this landscape. And so I know that there were a lot more questions raised than there were answered, but we're definitely going to be sharing notes and resources that we've gathered through this session, as well as like insights from this entire map. And if there are specific questions that you have that you'd like to follow up on, please write to us at edibleissues@gmail.com. With that in mind, I would like to maybe take one question that's come from the participants for both Chef Gresham and Hannah as a sort of something to think about as we maybe all start exploring ways to engage with Mahua in our own kitchens. When we look at food experimentation and exploration, how can we sort of find the balance, or how does one sort of live with the two parallels of learning from and respecting and recognizing traditional practices and recipes, but also really keeping that sort of constantly pushing what we can do with it and how we can taste and experiment and play with it. And Chef Gresham, this is something you were talking about a little bit, right? And about going back to the community to learn, but also really trying to push for new things. So how do you sort of find yourself between these two?
I mean, at the end of the day, it has to taste delicious, right? You cannot push an agenda so much that the dish carries the weight of that, right? I mean, one dish is not going to save Mahua or get it into the bigger picture and all that. I think, I mean, if you're cooking with it, just taste it, and if it tastes good and it's nice, for sure, you can go ahead and make it part of a repertoire of dishes that you cook and you keep with you. But it's always great to always have a baseline story, right? So, for example, if somebody's starting to use Mahua, they should have a baseline to start off with, right? Okay, that Mahua needs acidity, it needs this type of cleaning, or it needs something like that. So, I think once you put that out there, and then it depends on where the flowers come from, the amount of hydration that you need to put in, how do you need to roast it, all of those kind of things, right? That's a learning curve with any ingredient. But at the end of the day, the most important factor is, was it delicious, right? You might want to start off with cake and end up with a pudding, but was it delicious? Yes, it was. Can that pudding go into an ice cream? Is what is important, right? I mean, a Mahua ice cream from, say, a cow, that's, I mean, you need milk for ice cream, right? But imagine that cow ate the Mahua flour, right? And then you make ice cream out of that milk with dried Mahua. And you flambe it on the table with liquor Mahua, right? It goes back to this whole French, and I'm forgetting my names with history, but like the crepe a la Suzette is like your flambe of brandy. But imagine you do a flambe of Mahua with milk from the cow that ate the Mahua leaf and ate the Mahua flower, all of that. So it's a whole story. It's a whole story about sustainability and going full circle, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's taste. You got to first taste it, because for me, it's like if I've never tasted the savory version of it, I would never look that side. Obviously, for me, when the first time I saw a Mahua flower, it reminded me of a raisin. It reminded me of a rice that we would eat at home, like a berry, like no, not a berry pulao, but the East Indians, we do this wedding rice, it has rice with raisins in it, and we do this for Christmas also. So it's got sugar. You would brown sugar, and then you would cook your rice in it, and then add stock and all of that kind of thing. And you would also have raisins added to it, And for me, my first realization was, hey, we could do something with that. And anything that is sweet goes well with sour and goes well with spice. And the only other side that we've not played with is umami, right? So it's you ferment it with soybean and make a miso out of it, and then you can use that as a dessert or whatever. So yeah, so that will take another year, 6 months for us to figure that out. But like with any recipe for that matter, was it delicious? It might not be you must have wanted to make a biryani, but you ended up with a kheer. But was it tasty? Is what is important. Because you don't want to stop people from trying. You need to try. You need to keep. I mean, we have more failures than we have successes in our kitchen every day. So it's not MasterChef, guys. It's not done in 60 minutes. No way. It's a lie. Delete that, but yeah.
Absolutely. Just personally, really reeling from all of the incredible insights that have been coming in, both from speakers and in the chat box, and everything that's happening on the board. If we can just quickly, Bhairavi, if you can continue to spotlight the board. I just wanted to bring that up to to zoom out and say this is kind of where we are at. Like, we've gathered so many insights on the post-its, and we've been working to sort of place them along the map. And this is something that our team will continue to do over the next day or two, and process all of this information. The idea is to share resources and insights that have come out of this with all of you as well, along with sort of access to be able to view the map that eventually emerges from this. But I would to say that we've put on here this QR code. So if you would like to stay updated, if you're not already signed on to the mailing list where we will be sharing the updates and insights that come out of that, and if you feel like this conversation today has made you want to sort of dive deeper into these conversations in their different thematic streams, and to go deeper and explore and co-create more of these conversations with us, please drop your details in there. And I would like to take a moment to thank all of our speakers so much for coming on here today and sharing such incredibly diverse perspectives and experiences and knowledge from each of your domains and your work with Mahua. I think it's, for me, feels certainly just about begun scratching the surface, but already have covered so much ground in terms of the diversity of conversations that we can explore around this tree and this flower. So thank you all. It's been incredible to see how many of you have been interested in this conversation and have joined and stayed along over the last couple of hours. I want to thank you all for spending your Saturday afternoon with us, and would love to stay in touch as we continue to grow Mahua Matters. Thank you all. Is there anything that Elizabeth would like to say before we close?
No, thank you, Shivani, for moderating. This is a really great session, very interesting, and we're looking forward to seeing you all as we progress on this Mahua journey. Since you have since some of you have registered your interest, we'll also be sending you a couple of articles that people are writing, apart from resources, and even hope to do some in-person events over the next couple of months. So hopefully excited to see some of you in person and continue the conversation there.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend.